This is BBC Two with Jeremy Paxman and Newsnight.
They'll raise standards, they'll be more efficient. That was what the Conservative government said when it first put GCSEs, and that's pretty much what the new Conservative-led government is arguing for now they're abolishing them. Or put it another way, if a change is such good news for these children, why is the government waiting 5 years before the first of the new English baccalaureate exams happens? The Free Schools evangelist Toby Young and an education campaigner are here to be disagreeable.
To your right, please, sir.
The government ponders fresh budget cuts. Wage freezes have been a fact of life since the crash. Newsnight learns that benefits may soon get the same treatment. More British troops are killed by a rogue Afghan police detachment, while 2 Americans die at Camp Bastion, where Prince Harry is based. Did he get more protection than other soldiers?
Once we knew on Friday night that the perimeter at Bastion had been breached, he would have been moved to a secure position under effective guard.
Yes,
and this.
Badger, I will have another cup of tea. Good, good.
One false move and the Badger gets it. As the government authorises a cull, is it time we stopped being sentimental about animals? Springwatch's Simon King will defend Badger rights from the Tory MP Anne McIntosh. It's the best part of 25 years since the Conservatives brought in GCSEs because they said O-levels were clapped out. Now the current Conservative Education Secretary says he wants to bring O-levels back in England, or something which sounds pretty similar and goes by the name of the English Baccalaureate. No one's ever going to proclaim a policy of wanting standards to fall and children to be failed. So the only important question is, will the change work? Well, you can turn over your paper now, Sancha Berg.
4, 5, 6.
A Singapore-style maths lesson in central London. Michael Gove has often praised the academic rigour of the small Asian state and its tough exams. Students at the King Solomon Academy are learning to master maths the Singapore way.
This is 10,000. Here we go, here we go. The 2 main differences between the Singaporean approach and the conventional approach would be one in the style of teaching, which has much more of a concrete and tangible element built into every lesson. And the second would be the structure of the curriculum. So rather than structuring the curriculum based on 1-week, 2-week units and moving from fractions to algebra to decimals to back to algebra, back to fractions, we actually spend 6 or 7 weeks, a consolidated period of time, just on one topic, and then we move on to the next topic. And what that structure allows us to do is to achieve depth and mastery rather than breadth and light coverage.
Which is the way the system currently works in most schools.
Exactly, that's the way it currently works in most schools. Aziz, can you give me a square number lesson?
School starts here at 8 in the morning, finishes most days at 4:30, and there's a lot of homework. Just 5 days in, these new pupils say they enjoy it.
Even if you're not getting something and he explains it to you loads of times, he'll explain it again and it will still be fun. So I think maths is really fun.
I've learned that you can do 60 questions in less than 50 seconds, which is really good, and that will improve my multiplication knowledge.
Over half the pupils are on free school meals. 3/4 don't speak English at home. The head teacher's ambitious for them. He welcomes Michael Gove's reforms.
For me and for our school, we believe that all children are capable of achieving academic success and reaching a high bar, and that through the dedication of the staff here and their families, that we will help them to do that. And so for me, having a high bar is a good thing because it challenges us and them to make sure that the children are well educated and are able to succeed after 16.
Broadly, Michael Gove's plan is that GCSE will be replaced by the English Baccalaureate. The first courses will start in September 2015. The exams will be more rigorous. There will be one test, no modules, and no coursework in core subjects, and only one board will set the exam in each subject.
Critical to reform is ending an examination system that has narrowed the curriculum, forced idealistic professionals to teach to the test, and encouraged heads to offer children the softest possible options. We believe it is time for the race to the bottom to end. We believe that it is time to tackle grade inflation and dumbing down. And we believe that it is time to raise aspirations and to restore rigour to our examinations.
We on this side of the House will not support changes that only work for some children. We need system-wide improvement, and we need change that enjoys genuine support from the world of education and from employers. The truth is that these plans don't meet those challenges.
This announcement comes in the middle of the biggest controversy ever to hit the GCSE exam over the grading of this year's English language papers. That has seriously undermined the credibility of the test, and the row's not over yet. There's a difference between England and Wales as to the best way of handling this, and late tomorrow, some Welsh students are likely to get new grades.
If Michael Gove is genuine about consulting on the best possible exam system to fit with making sure that we have the best available education for children of all abilities in every school, then he wouldn't be starting from here. He'd be starting from a discussion about what is in the curriculum, what do we need to test, and what age do we need to test it.
Are there any questions you'd like to ask Mr Clegg? He's the Deputy Prime Minister.
This was a coalition initiative. It was the Liberal Democrats who reportedly delayed the start of the new exam and insisted there be one test for all. Some doubt the changes now planned are really significant.
Lots of these changes were already in train. For example, the modules were going for 2014. The EBAC subjects were already in place, although as an accountability measure rather than a curriculum for all. And the new GCSEs that were just introduced already included more stretching and challenging questions.
A consultation will last 3 months, and then in the new year, exam boards will start to bid to run the new qualifications. But the first students will only start studying for them in 3 years' time, after the next general election.
Well, here to discuss this are Toby Young, who's the co-founder of the West London Free School, and Jan Hodges, a former teacher and CEO of the education charity, the Edge Foundation. Let's start by seeing if we can find some agreement. Is there something wrong with the current system?
Absolutely. We believe very strongly that the current curriculum is not catering for the wide range of skills and abilities that it needs to. We would very much like to see all young people studying academic subjects, which are incredibly important, but also studying vocational options and having some method of assessment, some overarching diploma or baccalaureate, which recognises all of those achievements, not just the academic ones.
You'd agree that the current system isn't working?
I would, certainly.
So is this the correct solution to the problem?
Well, I think first of all, we have to establish that it's just uncontroversial that GCSEs at present aren't working. We've
just established that.
Well, I'm not sure. I don't think they're working for the same reason as Jan.
But, okay. We have different reasons for
why they're going to be improved.
Work. Yeah, okay.
One reason is the introduction of one overarching exam board. The problem with having more than one examination board is that in order to compete for business, they lower standards and you end up with a race to the bottom. Another thing that the reforms today are going to do is limit the number of students getting the top grade. In '98, 14% got A's or A stars. Last year, almost a quarter of all pupils got A's or A stars. So we need to actually limit the very top mark to just the very best pupils. But I think also the introduction of the English baccalaureate will make a difference. The problem with having more than one baccalaureate is it sort of defeats the purpose of having the EBAC. The purpose of the baccalaureate is to try and make sure that all children, no matter what their ability or what their background, get to study this core body of facts and leave school with some understanding, some grasp of the world, and not at a disadvantage when it comes to competing with children who happen to have been to grammar schools or independent schools.
Okay, let's take that point, this key thing about the English baccalaureate, which is what Michael Gove is proposing. What's wrong with his idea?
I think there's nothing wrong with it itself, but it doesn't go far enough. We think those academic subjects are very important. No one would argue that they're not. But But we also think it's really important that people get a chance to experience more vocational options, subjects like engineering, design and technology. This country is crying out for more people with those kinds of practical and applied skills.
And you can't do an English baccalaureate in those subjects?
No, it's confined to the academic core, and we would like to see it broadened and taken account of these wider range of subjects.
I mean, isn't horses for courses?
Yeah, but the English baccalaureate won't be mandatory. Children won't have to do the EBAC subjects. I mean, it's not nearly as draconian a reform as some people imagine. But the problem with what you've been saying is it can be code. It can be a smokescreen under which the curriculum is dumbed down. To give you an example, in 2004, the last government made a foreign language no longer mandatory, but they did make ICT mandatory. And before coming on the show tonight, I memorised an actual ICT GCSE question. It was a multiple choice question set in 2010. What can you not do on a computer? A, send an email, B, book a holiday, C, buy an Xbox, or D, try on before you buy. And the shocking thing, Jeremy, is that the examination board that set that exam actually was one of the boards that the Telegraph exposed last year for spoon-feeding the answers to children. They weren't even thought capable of getting the right answer.
You can't try it before you buy it.
That is the correct answer, yeah.
Thank heavens for that. I don't know what relevance that example has, but...
well, this is the dumbing down that's taken place
okay. All right, if it's so dumbed down, how does it possibly make sense not to do anything about this until 2017?
I think that was an accommodation that the Secretary of State had to reach with
that man he introduced as the Deputy Prime Minister.
He reminded people was the Deputy Prime Minister. I mean, I think if the Secretary of State had his way, they would be introduced faster, and they obviously should be.
But I actually welcome the opportunity for more debate and discussion. I think we should ask much harder questions about why we want people to learn certain things. What's the purpose of it? Are we really preparing people for the 21st century? Will requiring them to do 3-hour written exams at the end as the only really means of assessment, is that really preparing people for the world of work? We hear from employers all the time that they want people who can problem solve, who are enterprising, creative, innovative. I'm not convinced that just sticking to academic subjects alone and just doing 3-hour examinations are really going to deliver the improvements we need.
The current system is demonstrably not producing the right people.
Well, we're not disagreeing with that. We're just saying we believe these proposals don't go far enough. And it was very interesting in the piece to hear about Singapore, because to some extent they've been rowing back a little bit from a lot of rote learning and preparation for exams. They're recognising their young people need a wider range of skills and abilities, and you can't just test those things through 3-hour exams.
I'm not sure. Would you cite Singapore as an example, full of people with creative problem-solving attitudes to things?
I think that often this debate is poisoned by a rather stereotypical portrait of the kind of buttoned-up Eastern male who is a sort of nerd and incapable of creativity. And actually, I don't think that is really any longer true. But I also think it's a myth to imagine that in order to foster creativity, you can't have rote learning, you can't have an emphasis on the acquisition of factual knowledge. An academic called Rex Gibson looked at the education that Shakespeare had in Stratford-upon-Avon, and it included, amongst other things, having to learn 100 Latin phrases by rote. And yet I don't think you'd claim that Shakespeare wasn't creative. I think the kind of skill sets you identified as being wanted by employers in the 21st century were also, oddly enough, the skill sets that employers wanted in the 20th century, the 19th century, and stretching back to time immemorial. And I think we need a combination of knowledge and skills. We don't need to downgrade the importance of knowledge to upgrade the importance of skills.
I agree with you entirely, Toby. That's exactly right.
God, we've ended where we started. Thank you very much.